Black people are raised to see certain things, and white people are not raised to see certain things. So, for example, um, most black people are anti-capitalist, in the sense that, yeah, they blame capitalism for the plight. So
Yeah.
so and so and I wrote an article on it, about Ibrahim Kendi. Ibrahim
Yeah.
Kendi's work, how to be an anti-racist, and he's an anti-capitalist, and I was just saying, well, that, how is it that he's anti-capitalist, but he's benefiting and he's profiting from capitalism with his book sales and being able to leverage that to build other platforms at academic institutions? That's capitalism. And
Yeah.
so what I was seeing was that his anti-capitalism ideas
Mhm.
um, mirrored that of slave masters, because they were anti-capitalist as well, in the
Mhm.
sense that they were denying black people their own property right.
Yeah.
But yeah, but what would you say to black people who are anti-capitalist or anti yeah.
So the thing with black people being anti-capitalist is a false concept that the Marxian Leninist theory was put into their head. And that started with Pan-Africanism, So Lenin wrote a book on imperialism saying that imperialism is the reason why we have colonization and African countries are poor and everything. First and foremost, why black people are so poor. Here's the thing: when slavery started, first of all, slavery exists for a very, very long time. It didn't start just with black people, but how slavery with black people occurred? It occurred because in order to weaken a a particular group, you need to know the weaknesses. And one of the weaknesses of black people is that we're not united. We When you see your African fellow man being successful at something, instead of supporting him, you hate him. So it was easier for white folks to use that to enslave black people. Because when they came in Africa, most of the slaves were from the inland. White people were so racist that they would just stay on the coast. They would not go in the inland. They don't know anybody there. So who brought those slaves, those black men from the inland into the coast? Someone has to do it. It was their fellow black men. They
Mhm.
were selling each other. So that was perhaps the greatest weakness that we have in the community, and white folks understood that, and they simply exploited. And this same concept is reflected in the 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 field Negro and the house Negro, where the house
Mhm.
Negro fell to when if you guys watch Django, you guys
Yep.
perhaps like
Yep.
saw this concept. So we say like the field Negro is inferior, the house Negro who lives with the white slave master feels more superior and stuff.
Mhm.
And then now the concept of Pan-Africanism grew from that, and saying that in order for black people to be liberated, they need to fight against capitalism. But they clearly didn't understand that the definition of capitalism the uh, is the private means of production. It
Mhm.
is when the means of production are privately owned. It means that you need to have property rights. You cannot have capitalism without property rights. And they thought that by having socialism, by using the dependency theory, they will be able to liberate themselves. And here's the hypocrisy too. When black people got their freedom, when slavery was abolished, right? A lot of blacks went back to Africa and they settled in this piece of land called Liberia. That's where the word Liberia comes from, means freedom.
Mm.
Yeah, Liberia, it's basically one of the countries that was never colonized. It was, in fact, where former slaves settled for those who wanted to go back to Africa after slavery. And
Okay.
what happened? The the freed slaves who settled in Liberia enslaved the indigenous Liberians.
Really?
Look it up.
Really?
Look it up. The first indigenous Liberian president, his name is Samuel K. Doe. Samuel K. Doe. The Doe is DOE. Samuel
Mhm.
K. Doe. He was the first black African Liberian president.
Mhm.
Before that, all of them were descendant of free slaves.
Hmm.
They created they completely ostracized Liberian society. So you have basically the slave masters, so the masters of Liberian society who were the freed slave, and all the indigenous Liberians were the poor. Literally, what
Mm.
happened to them here? They replicate the same thing in Liberia.
Hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
fascinating.
So the concept of like, oh, we need socialism to against to free us against capitalism is nonsense. And now to come back to Abraham Kendi, what Kendi is doing is what Marx and Engels did. They say they're anti-capitalist, and yet Marx live in England. He goes to the library every day, right, making money, drinking his coffee, and talk about how capitalism is bad. And yet, for people who want to visit his grave, they got to pay.
Mhm.
So he's still
Right,
making
right.
money even in his death.
Yeah, yeah.
So people who always say the anti-racist, the anti-capitalist they are the complete opposite of what they say.
Mhm. Yeah,
Hmm.
and
Because to
even,
me,
like
like because sorry, to me, like if you say you are an anti-capitalist, please leave the market economy and go live in a place where there is no market economy. At least stand by your words.
Hmm.
But you can't say you're
Mhm.
anti this and you live in the place you live in the place you're completely against about. It doesn't make sense.
and
Right,
and
yeah.
and reaping the benefits of that system.
Yeah, exactly. And you say, "Oh, I'm anti-capitalist." Move to Venezuela, move to Cuba,
Mhm.
move to North Korea,
But that's not real socialism.
right? Because
Mhm.
it fails. But socialism is doomed to fail because you abolish private property.
Yeah. Well,
Mhm.
okay, well, since we're on the topic of, race and capitalism and being black, some of the work of Thomas Sowell, was my introduction as a to economics.
Mhm.
He's a black economist, and he was just talking about, like, the idea of the word capitalism isn't even a word that capitalists use, or it was a name given to people who actually believed in the free market.
Yeah,
But, like, Marx was using the term capitalism to call, that's what he was calling people who believed in the free market. And
yeah,
Sowell is just arguing that capitalism is not a system. He's like, it's not a system. It's it's a market with little government intervention,
yeah.
where people are free to make trade, as they please.
Absolutely, yeah. And he's right. Marx, in fact, used capitalism in a derogatory sense. Is to is to make the owners of the means of production feel guilty about the wealth.
Mm.
It's yeah, it's to make them feel bad about it. Like, oh, you're capitalist. You're depriving people. You have all the capital for yourself.
Mm.
Me
Mhm.
personally,
Mhm.
I know I'm a big capitalist and I'm proud of it.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
don't. I don't know why people like it's. If there's one thing I really hate is poverty. There's nothing good about being poor.
Mhm.
People should not be proud to be poor. Oh
Mhm.
yeah, we're the poor, we're the good guy. Like they always try to make people think like, oh, the poor are the good guys, the rich are the bad guys.
Yeah. But you know what? I'd also add, like, and I guess, like, from me, because I look at things through a theological framework, and
Mhm,
so the idea of sin and
mhm,
people doing wrong,
mhm.
I don't think that it's associated with a particular
Social class.
school of thought. Yeah, school of thought. So, for example, um, people who are capitalists can be evil,
Mhm,
right? They can be bad people. They could be good people. People who are socialist could be good people. They could be bad people.
Mhm.
But capitalism doesn't make people bad. Socialism doesn't make people good. People are going to make their decisions. But I would say certain types of certain ideologies will incentivize better behavior. So hence why the free market will incentivize better behavior, because if you treat your customers well and you provide services people need, you'll be rewarded by your customers or even by the government,
Mhm.
in the sense that
Absolutely.
you'll get those tax exemptions the better you do, and the more service you provide,
Mhm.
versus an
Absolutely.
incentive in a socialist perspective, where you're incentivized not to do anything but to take from others.
Yeah, absolutely. I entirely agree. It's capitalism is about serving the free market. The free market is about serving your fellow man. It's
Hmm.
about, and that's what Adam Smith said. It's people serving the fellow man by pursuing the self interest.
Yes, yes,
And
and yeah, go ahead.
and there is nothing. And to me, the righteous way to become a good person is to provide a service to people. So that's why when entrepreneurs like Jeff Bezos are so rich, I don't know why people are mad. I say, like, you have there are generally two ways to become extremely wealthy. By, first it was the aristocrat. The aristocratic class, in fact, was created basically once a war or so once a war occurred, and the victory side was taking all the material wealth of the losing side, and that's how they create the wealth, and then they passing on to the generations. But these people didn't create wealth the proper way. And then you have the entrepreneur who take risk, who take his capital without a guarantee that his idea will be successful, create something that provides value to people and to society as a whole. He's making
Hmm.
money off that, and people are mad. He
Mhm.
Yeah.
hasn't he hasn't killed anyone. He hasn't steal from anyone. So why are you mad?
Mhm.
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
Compared
think
No.
to the aristocrat, like people like Marie Antoinette, all these rich aristocrats in the 1700s in Europe who basically built their wealth from stealing.
mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had an
No.
episode with Holly Fretwell, from Perk, and we titled it "Raid versus Trade." Right, like
Right?
Yeah.
that's essentially what you're talking about, right? That it's a dichotomy between you got your wealth by stealing it, or
Yeah.
raiding other people and acquiring it, or you traded and created wealth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you look at Mensa Musa, when people thought, oh, Mensa Musa is the richest man of all time. Well,
Hmm.
when we compare Mensa Musa to J.D. Rockefeller, Mensa Musa created his wealth by war, killing people.
Yes.
All the people that were living in the Mali Empire were his
Hmm.
subjects. It was the Leviathan. Whatever resources in that land was his. Everything that was happening was his. But J.D. Rockefeller started not necessarily that poor, but he didn't even finish high school. He started his business and created value to people.
Yeah. Yeah. No, we actually did an episode, Who Wants to Be a Billionaire? And we
I
talked
want
about
to be a billionaire.
Mansa Musa.
Yeah,
Yeah, we
who
talked.
doesn't?
Talked about Mansa Musa, but we looked at how those billionaires created their wealth. That's what Joel and I were investigating. Like, okay, these guys are rich. How did they get their money? And I think, to kind of point back to what you were saying, Germinal, about people hating those who are doing well. Yeah, I think of a quote from the rapper Nas, um, from the song "You Can Hate Me Now," and he says,
Right?
"People hate what they don't understand. People
Exactly.
fear what they don't understand. Hate what they can't conquer." Right?
Exactly.
And so that, and people are ignorant. So the idea is, like, even just generate, even as we talk about capitalism, just to be clear, like, we don't live in a pure capitalistic economy, right? It's not a pure free market that we live in.
No,
There's no
no.
such thing, right? And I think it's important for people to know that all of our economies are a mixture of both
Yeah.
um, um, social control and free market.
The truth is, The free market is an ideal. It has never existed. The same way
Right.
communism has never existed. They're both ideals. It's something we aspire to, but it has never existed. Even uh, Adam Smith, who theorized about the free market, he supported some government intervention. Sure, very minimal, but still.
Mhm.
So yeah, there was some stuff that he saw government was necessary, like building some infrastructures, which is to some extent I don't disagree with that. But like, yeah, the free market has never ever existed per se. It's
Mhm, mhm.
something we keep aspiring to, but I
Mhm.
don't think we will ever achieve that.
I agree.
Please subscribe and hit the bell to stay up to date. If you liked or disliked the snippet, give it a like and share your 2 cents with us in the comment section. And remember, 6 cents makes change.